Hello to you all. I hope that this video finds you all doing really well. I think I mentioned recently in a video that maybe 4 or 5 times along this journey on pyramid energy, I've had to take a step back, and this is not what I'm doing now, but what usually happens before I take a step back is I somehow find myself needing to talk, and it sometimes presents as a rant. And then I realize, okay, there was a lot to integrate there, because as you go, there are a whole lot of experiences that sort of result in this accumulation of suppressed stuff, that you don't want to really address or you don't understand. And it's just this build up. And so you kind of have to do some spring cleaning. And like, if I look back, that's what those moments have been about. More recently, I have felt more and more that we are, I don't want to say entering, but we're in a very significant phase of this journey, I suppose, spiritually speaking, where a lot is changing. And so that's why I extended this invitation for any of you to ask me some questions. And I do believe I was clear that this wouldn't be a reading, but to engage on some topics. It took me a while to realize that questions are actually constantly coming in. Some of them, I kind of see them and then I'm like, how am I going to answer this? And so then I kind of dismiss them for that reason, that I don't actually have a space to answer these questions. And writing responses in the comments section, it's not that it's tedious, but it gets me very much in my mind. And I felt that it's like better for me to rather dedicate my energy to the actual readings where a lot of those answers will come out. But another thing I've recognized lately is, especially through engaging with some of these questions and contemplating them, I had a lot of clarity come up today as I read through some of these questions, is that I believe some of these things actually do need to be engaged on. Okay, so when I'm doing a reading, I'm not really engaging you. I am, but not really. It's not a conversation. It is a conversation. However, I'm giving sort of one-way expression. There's no room for any new questions that might come up. Perhaps it's not their time, whatever, but I feel like there's some stuff going on. And, maybe one of the topics I'd say is controversial. And we're going to go there. And it's not because I'm afraid. I'm not like giving a huge disclaimer here. I just feel like this used to be one of those things. I'm talking about money. This used to be one of those things I would sort of get sort of afraid of talking about, just because it's a topic that carries a lot of projection. There's a lot of wounding around the topic of money and all of that. But there are also some of these questions and comments that I want to talk about where I get to share a lot more of my understanding about what's going on, not just in the world, but spiritually speaking again, here on pyramid energy, what this is, okay? Because when I started this channel, I honestly had no idea what I was doing. I was a card reader. I was reading energy. I already had an understanding that the way that I read cards, and I'm not the only one who does this, but the way I read cards isn't really about telling you what's happening in your life and what you should do about it and who's interested in you, okay? I've been aware that it's got to do with sort of building a life for yourself that feels coherent and in alignment through putting into words what is happening in your mind, what is happening in your heart, how these things relate, and in a way that expresses it to you sort of with this magic where you feel seen magically without having told me what it is that you need from me. I just happen to express that to you, okay? Because I do believe that's part of the magic, and also the reason why when I used to do personal readings, I never used to ask for questions. maybe I did once or twice, but it just didn't work. It didn't work, the question asking. And not just here on Pyramid Energy, even before I started the channel, when I used to offer readings on my Instagram and, in my personal world. As we go, I'm going to put some of these questions on the screen for anyone who wants to read. Some of them are a bit long, and so I'll just zone in on the actual point of the thing that I'm going to discuss, so that, we don't make this too long, because I have no idea how long this is going to be. Okay. Before I start on the first one of the things I just want to say to you is I'm so grateful for this community. There are so many things to be said about why I'm grateful for the community, and I think a lot of them are already obvious. But the one that I want to mention is, especially lately, I feel at home. I feel at home. I feel like I can be myself. I feel like what I'm doing is making a difference in my own life and in the lives of others. I also feel so fortunate to have a comment section that is so rich. I've said this before, but what I mean by that is there are things that are contributed. There's a major contribution in the comment section. When I send someone to my channel, to a video or whatever, I always sort of want to say to them, don't forget to read the comment section. There's a lot there. And that's really how I feel about your contribution, your energy, so many things. I was thinking about this yesterday, and again, this need to chat to you, like you're my friends. And this idea of friends, friendship, it's almost like you think you need to have a person on WhatsApp to be their friend. But, we can't do that here. I just simply don't have that kind of capacity. And then it would take away from the actual point of having this Pyramid Energy channel. But to actually feel like when I comment to you and I can say, thanks, my friend, it's amazing that this idea of friendship could shift so much out of this idea that you need physical contact and, to feel like you're speaking to your kin. We say this person is not my blood, but who are we to say what's your blood and what's not? Just because it's got all differentiated along the way, ever since the first humans were on Earth, it doesn't mean we're not blood. The connection feels that deep. I think there are lots of people who comment and they'll say something like, how do you know this? They'll feel like, completely seen, and like what I've said is so particular to them. What I've gathered about what this is going on here on this channel, I'm a conduit. I think, I believe, this is not a hard belief, but I reckon that the reason, let's say this is me on Pyramid Energy, hosting this channel, I'm a facilitator of something here. I believe that this is my calling, okay? And I believe I've been called to do this, perhaps because either my higher self or whatever the spirit is that's actually speaking into this field that speaks to all of you and me. I believe that maybe I'm the one who's here sitting in my chair simply because they knew they've sent the most stubborn person onto Earth. And once I've decided that I'm going to do something, even if everything looks like it's not going to work, I insist and I do it. You know what I mean? Even when it becomes like such a painful experience, if my heart tells me, but there's something there. There's something there. They knew that about me. They knew that about me because honestly, and I believe this to be the case with pretty much any one of you, when you consider your heart's desire, it almost comes through with this protection. And that protection is actually, your own resolve and your own protection of your dream. Like, it's like if you know in your heart that something is meant to happen for you, and this thing is layered. It's not just, I want a channel called Pyramid Energy, because I didn't know that. it's wanting this thing so much without really being able to justify it. This thing that often can even come sort of covered and shrouded in shame and all these reasons why you shouldn't do it, yet you still know you've got to do this thing. This thing where people will tell you, no, it doesn't make sense. Nobody ever manages to become successful and whatever they want to say. Like, there's a reason all these difficulties are created around this thing. And what happens is that as you like sort of shed those layers, the shame layers and the impossible layer and all those layers that deter you from pursuing yourself, because that's essentially what you're doing, you end up sort of, as you go, gaining a clearer picture of where it is you're going. Okay, it's all dark. You never have the full story because you're always creating the story as you go. But as soon as you start uncovering some of it, you realize that it's possible. And you do then encounter another layer of this feeling of impossible. But because you already uncovered one layer at the surface of the impossible, you uncovered it and you saw, okay, there's something here. You kind of don't stop. You become like a dog with a bone. You kind of don't stop. And slowly, all of this sort of man-made and perpetuated logic is really lost on me. And so I realized that a lot of people, when they build something, whether it's their craft or some kind of structure to carry their art, okay, they appear to have it all sort of figured out, because a lot of types of art already have sort of determined or created sort of systems and structures through which they operate. Like music, if you're going to become an artist, a singer or whatever, you generally get a record deal, whatever happens, I don't know. And then you end up on Apple Music or Spotify. There are ways to do these things. Okay. So, and then there are also, like, let's say, for a simple example, a card reader who knows they're going to start a channel doing love readings because they've been doing love readings for 10 years and now they're putting it on YouTube. I think that kind of journey appears straightforward. But ever since I got onto pyramid energy, I have not known what I'm doing. I have not known what I'm doing. I have not known what direction it will take. I also have looked many times at other channels to see what are they doing. Perhaps I'm on my way there. And every now and again, I'm like, I don't think I'm on my way there. I don't know where I'm going, but I don't think it's there because it's a feeling. It's a feeling. But what I've decided to actually settle on in terms of what is going on here on Pyramid Energy is a project. And I say project because it's built for a purpose. I can't see what that purpose is exactly. It sort of gives its own instructions as I go. I pick up on these instructions through my intuition and my feeling and all of that, and also your feedback. But it's absolutely amazing to come here and read energy, okay? And it's been a journey because primarily this channel has been me reading for us, but actually I read and I'm like, I get my own readings out of these readings. I know many tarot card readers and energy readers say that the readings are not about themselves, which I respect. I just don't know how that works, but I respect it again. This is just my lens and how my work has gone. And so I can't speak for another person. But at the same time, I very much believe this one truth that has been such a pillar for me, being as within, so without. And this comment here that says, nailed it. It's pretty cool to hear it verbalized externally, riding the wave. This was not a question, but I loved it because it basically, I wanted to use it as a way of sharing that it's as amazing for me, first of all, to experience this reading where there are so many other people that relate to it just as closely as me. Okay. It's also informed the reason why I don't generalize these readings. I actually don't know how to generalize a reading. I read what I see. And if something comes in, I don't know how to dismiss certain aspects because I'm going to start to generalize the reading. What it's done in terms of my work is that it's really challenged me in terms of how am I actually going to make money from this channel if my readings are so particular. But I had no other way out because, to remove the particularity requires at least two things from me. One, to dilute what is coming through spirit, which I've never been willing to compromise on, because as soon as I compromise on an aspect, I literally actually don't know where I am. Because when I open up to spirit, I'm opening up everything. I'm surrendering. And so there's no surrender, but yeah, please give me the rope. It's not like that for me. Very much going into these containers is like all or nothing, which is also a big reason why I over time have experienced this sort of tension and resistance going into this room that I read from. Not the physical room, I mean the container, when I create this space. It is scary because there's that fear that what if I say something that is going to land badly? What if I say the wrong thing? And I'm so grateful because essentially the evidence that you've provided through confirming me in the comments has made me realize that it doesn't matter whether I'm looking at today or 6 months ago or 2 years ago, the containers were always what they were. The only difference between 2 years ago and now is the level of trust I have in spirit and in myself to surrender and to not know what I'm doing, but to do it because it's not coming from me. Where it comes from, this is the project. Where it comes from is it comes from this one thing. This one thing that seems to drop the same information to you all. The reason why I believe, the reason why these readings resonate with you is because out there, in there, somewhere, there is this information that is dropped. And this individual, this stubborn individual called Khonze, made it her job to come here and talk about these things. I didn't know that this was what was going to happen, but this is what happened. And so says something I want to say about your intuition, a lot about your intuition, because I come here and I say stuff that you recognize. I don't even know that there's a recognition until you mirror that back to me. And so this is a very, it's this relationship, if we can forget about what they say about relationships and friendships and all that, but it's actually this relationship where, without creating this idea of codependency among us, there is something that I bring and there's something that you bring. Without one of these things, this thing that is created here in the middle cannot actually be created. It cannot be brought. Okay? And it creates, I want to share with you so much, not just richness, it creates such close community. For someone who's just arrived on the channel, who has expressed to spirit, please give me guidance on this matter, confirmation, and they don't know where they're going to get this information. Somehow this algorithm supports their ask, sends them a video. They listen to my voice, they go to the comment section and they can't understand how, this could be someone who's not even been in the spiritual space that long, right? Because that's also the reason why I asked Spirit to change my language and not make it so much full of terminology where if you haven't read 1,000 books on spirituality, you get lost. My language to me feels very simple. And even over the last few months, I've dropped, I say masculine and feminine much less. I mean, I still say it, but all these concepts where you've got to be well read, Because I'm not actually well read. I'm well spirited. I'm not well read. And I think I'm built that way. I'm built this way for a reason. Every time someone recommends a book, I actually don't end up reading it because it's hard to read. I used to be able to read, but it's hard to read. But there's so much going on that the reading process sort of creates this automatic comparison, and all my sort of Excel spreadsheets of you read this there, cross-checking. It's too much for my brain. It's just too much for my system. And so what I'm saying here is that, I give this disclaimer. I'm not a medical professional. I'm not a healthcare professional or whatever. That's true. But essentially, what exists here is a form of therapy for all of us in a world where when you go and sit on a psychologist's chair, they just cannot relate on the level at which you're feeling and perceiving your life. And so this space is able to receive literally anyone who is wanting to create these changes in their lives and has already started that process and is already engaging themselves and cannot be understood so much by others around them. Some are just listening for purposes of intrigue, which is great and it's valid. But essentially, your presence here, my presence here, all of us together are seriously changing how quickly we're able to process and integrate and evolve. And a lot of people that, let's say, encounter each and every one of us in our 3D lives may not even know or understand how you operate and how you process and the level at which you sort of think or process, like intuitively where you're at, because you haven't shared it with them, or they can't digest it, or whatever it is. The world is benefiting from this part of you. And so I want to say thank you, because where I feel I am today and how I feel about myself as an individual, as a person, I'm not just validated. It's not that. I'm just so grateful because I simply wouldn't be able to do this journey on my own. And I'm not saying that, I'm not saying I need you. There's a balance here. We, as humans, we do want connection and we need it. We should feel connected because we are. And so it's sort of like creating this balance so that you still have your freedom, your agency. No one's telling you who you are and what you're about and all of that. This applies to you. This applies to me. But I do feel like this thing is greater. It's greater than all of us. It's greater than all of us. It's not, and I'm not speaking purely for pyramid energy. I'm speaking about this thread that runs around the entire collective, runs through it, around it, and is really shifting so many of us and is able to accommodate all of us at our various stages and levels of awareness and all of that. The next comment I took a screenshot of is here from Kauzi. Please excuse me, Kauzi108, if I didn't pronounce that properly. But the part that I wanted to say, hello to you in Australia, but they said, I really appreciate and sometimes hesitate to watch more due to the very detailed introspection needed to grow with you. The first line before that I should have read says, thank you for your succinctly, beautifully arranged messages in this space. When I read a comment like that, there are two things that I want to say. Already, I can't take the credit for that first line. Already, because I didn't speak like this before pyramid energy. It's not complicated. It's not that deep. I did not speak like this before pyramid energy. through expanding, through all of this energy on the channel, all of your perceptions and all the things that are brought in order to achieve this one goal, to allow us to understand how connected we are, and then to allow these new threads of information to reach us through feeling safe in our intuition. Okay. This is how my voice has developed. My voice, literally, if I send you to older videos, you'll tell the difference in my actual voice. It's like deeper. Sometimes it goes a bit more high pitched. I couldn't stand it when it sounded high pitched, but now I can listen to my voice, right? It resonates with me now, thankfully. But all these words, the arrangement, I trust every reading. I have this sort of agreement with Spirit where I don't actually do that much editing. The only editing I'll do is if like a door bangs, or maybe I say an that we really do not need another of, or I've just repeated myself and I got lost where I was and needed to go back a bit. That's the kind of editing that I do. But I don't take a chunk of what I've read and then think, oh, that's better in the beginning, and I don't. So what comes through in the order that it comes through, which means like now look at us, we're at 26.5 minutes. And I'm on like the second screenshot and not actually addressed any questions yet. I don't know. I don't know how to handle that aspect of YouTubing, because it is what it is. And maybe there's going to be more than one video. We'll see what happens. But I do not take the credit for those kinds of comments. And I feel like it's like rude to not say thank you. So sometimes I say thank you, but it's also like, who do I think I am taking all that credit when I know credit is due to Spirit and every single person who shows up for themselves, to bring this quality of energy through. So thank you. Then there's the part about, wanting to watch more due to the very detailed introspection needed to grow with you. You know, it's tricky, this thing. And I'm going to name it, let's call it like rapid growth, the speed of how quickly I seem to be evolving. And I'm not just blowing my own horn here. It is what it is. It has sometimes felt like, if I were to observe old Khunzi, looking at Khunzi now, it feels like, maybe biting off more than one can chew. It can feel like, things could just run away with me. I've often felt scared. I'm like, maybe just slow down because you're going to be alone. That's how I feel sometimes. But I'm not alone, which is the most amazing feeling. And not just that, it's part of the reason why I removed a lot of I'm trying to, and I'm working on it. I'm leaving it to Spirit, but removing a lot of the jargon and terminology so that, essentially, you can slot in at any point, because again, I don't believe anyone ever gets left behind. It's more around a person's appetite and all of that. But what I want to say is that these readings sometimes get dense. It's the truth. They get dense. One of the ways that I cope with chunks of information that I feel are dense is that I don't force it. I don't necessarily click away, and I'm not saying stay on the videos and don't stop watching. That's not what I'm saying. That's not the purpose of this. But I often find it's easier to process stuff, input when I'm reading the words as I'm hearing them. It's partly like, it's my processor, neurologically speaking. Is that a word? It's like, it's how I process. It's like I can't just listen, because then as I'm listening, the sort of hearing channel that's bringing in information through my like spiritual ears, let's call it, competes with the audible information that's actually 3D sort of audible, if that makes sense. It competes. And so reading subtitles feels grounding, because I'm able to sort of use my visual input. Now I sound like what do you call it? You know, those machines where they plug in the video and the audio and it's like that. So I feel like if I'm reading as I'm taking in, it can help me. And sometimes I do something else and I listen in the background, because then my senses are sort of captured somewhere else. You know, they're teaching children at the moment. I don't know. I think it's a way of helping children cope who struggle with, sensory input and overload. That helps. But I also think it's very important to not force your body to take in stuff that's just too much. I respect that. But I also want to note that you don't need to force your system to engage at such levels of detail. Your system is sophisticated enough and intelligent enough to be able to capture a lot of what you're hearing and receiving, separate the denser stuff, weights. It's like a sieve when you're like sieving, like, icing sugar or whatever. Some of those rocks, they stay. Not rocks, but the clumps. They stay until you're ready. As you shake it and shake it and shake it. But the stuff that comes in easily will come through. And the stuff that is not coming through will come through when it's ready. And even if you don't remember it at the end of the video, it's somehow sitting somewhere in your memory and it will filter down when it's ready. So much of this work is actually not thinking work, is what I want to say. And perhaps that's why, let's say, some people's voices are like literally made for listening. I remember seeing a comment here once where someone said, I often fall asleep listening to your videos. Sometimes they return to listen properly and sometimes they don't. I have people that do readings where I fall asleep, but I listen. And I have, last night, there's one favorite reader that I have, and I don't want to name them now here because I don't want to offend them, but I literally listened to half and I could not take in any more because it felt like so much had been shared in the first half that my system was just saying, no, put this away. You'll go back when you're ready. I've also found that what happens when I finally go back, if I do, there is information that I then download myself that is confirmed in, let's say, that second half, which is very interesting, isn't it? Okay, I actually can name her channel, because that was very silly of me. There was absolutely nothing offensive that I said there. This is Duran's Healing Circle, guys. This woman is amazing. I love this channel so much. I can't explain. She reaches me at a level where I feel touched. I feel touched by something on earth that feels real. That's how her stuff feels for me. So there you go. You can just search it on YouTube. You'll find her channel. But that's sometimes what deters a person from overly engaging with content. It can land as heavy because perhaps you're meant to either receive it yourself or you're not, it's not your time for it. So trust yourself on that is what I'd say. But I definitely, the main thing I wanted to stress about that particular line is this work is not meant to feel mental. It's not meant to feel too mental, too logic based. I often use logic to dismantle some of these built beliefs that need some reconfiguration. But it should just make sense. And if it's not making sense as yet, you can rewind it, but it should not feel like you're studying a book and you need to go through line by. I know maybe I'm being too prescriptive here. So please excuse me if I have been, because I'm not channeling now. I'm just, this is just being me. And I don't know if that's come through. By the way, I'm a very opinionated person. I don't bring that aspect of me too much to the channel because I open up to spirit, but just as an individual, I am such a normal human being. I sometimes listen to my videos and it's hard to reconcile the channeled messages with myself. I'm much more reconciled than I used to feel. I definitely am. This has come through self-acceptance and really embracing the journey and integrating and realizing that being superhuman is not actually that crazy. Being superhuman, super means very, 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 and human is human. And so basically being superhuman is being very, 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 very human. And so it's okay. we are meant to be amazing. We are divine, and it's just this journey of integrating your divinity. That's what becoming superhuman is. Then there's this next question. Do you think that the resistance you feel is potentially maybe your personal fear manifesting in a perceived outside form or energy? Love you, heart. There's a lot more that Lauren goes on to say. Thank you, Lauren. As within, so without means that whether I read something from the inside of me, something that's happening energetically within me, or reading it externally, it exists in both places. The reason I'm able to perceive it externally is because it exists internally. The reason why I'm able to perceive it internally is because it exists externally. There are often times where I read something that appears external to me, and then only when I'm editing and listening to the reading do I recognize, wait a minute. It's really easy to just blame it on everyone else, isn't it? And I find that this is very much internal. But especially lately, what I've woken up to is that I'm reading from various dimensions all the time. When I enter a reading and I say this feels so abstract, that is generally the time where I'm reading from many dimensions. That means I'm reading it from inside energetically. I don't know what we call this, 5D. Again, terminology, I don't actually understand all these terms. Or I'm actually reading about a person outside of me. Let's call that 3D. I could be reading from, it's energy, right? It's energy. And so energy is not separate. It's not separated. It flows. It flows, and it's determined by the timing, and it's determined by your, like what you see of it as from your perspective. I could literally have had a dream and come here and read something that I'm relating to through the dream that I had. And so then let's say these people, they're not actually in my life or whatever, but I have this understanding because I dreamed it. And the way it lands on you, you may not know that it was a dream. You think I'm talking about your brother. That's how you receive it. And then I have situations where, let's say, I'm talking about someone I actually know, and I don't say this reading is about someone I know, and I do the reading. It sort of anchors me. Do you know what I mean? It gives me a reference point. I'm sharing something I don't think I've ever shared, like sometimes how I actually, like what anchors me. And I don't always have an actual anchor, but especially if I'm not using cards, I usually have something to anchor me. And let's say I'm reading for someone I actually know, and I see them. It's not that I intend to read for them, but I see them appearing in the container. They appear, and then it's sort of, they help to color in the energy and to color the picture through. But it's actually just, that's me reading how the energy, which already exists, has manifested through this figure. And then when you listen, you might actually listen and not have a person in your life that's doing this stuff, but this thing, you feel it and you've experienced this energy playing out. There's another example of this here. This one was from Shauna. She says, 111 likes as I see this. I believe what you're sensing into is the collective feminine uprising. Shauna is referring to the last 2-part video that I shared, something about exposed. Okay, so that story to me sounded very much like a particular person, but the reading came through with so much that actually, when I look back, was talking about this shift from 3D to 4D and masculine structures falling away. And she's called it the collective feminine uprising. And it's not about control, it's about authority and worth. You see, and then she says, every woman in my world is leaving relationship or setting hard boundaries around how their relationships are functioning. Thank you for this. Thank you so much for this comment, Sean. I actually responded to it. But what I want to say here is, this is an example of how energy can manifest through a woman. Okay, so like this, she's calling it feminine uprising, through a woman in her life, looking at either structures, systems, or an actual relationship, realizing she's sort of been under this control that is no longer working, and it's too uncomfortable to sit through, and it's suddenly just not her responsibility to carry this person who has survived a certain way. And it's like, you know, it could be that, but it very much could be a woman referring to her job, and it could be an entire man, let's say, leaving a relationship with a woman. Same energy. And let's say for me personally, as someone who's not in a relationship with another partner, I sort of do not have a physical relationship to leave, because best know it, maybe I'm believing. I'm joking. But that was dark. But what I'm trying to say here, I have to stay focused, Honze. What I'm trying to say here is, I can still see how this is playing out in my world. It's just not as rough as I think it's feeling for a lot of people right now. I've had my experiences that are more 3D rough in this sense. I've walked that walk. But there are ideas around how I should be doing my work, how others in my space are doing this work, the rules that they have indirectly, possibly unconsciously imposed on all of the rest of us, and me just realizing, well, and some is actually also the audience can sometimes do this stuff just out of how things have always worked. We all contribute to this, and I'm not excluding myself, because I'm sort of on both ends. I'm audience and I'm host of a channel. There are things where I'm like, that's not working. Let's say, for example, and as I explain this scenario that's played out for me here on the channel, okay, let's say Pyramid Energy is my partner. Try to see how this fits in terms of, let's say, a person's personal relationship, where you love this person, okay, and you've tried to make things work with this person. So let's say me and Pyramid Energy, and there's a way that I've been doing stuff. I show up on the channel and I share readings. And so I'm sharing my energy. And a lot of the things that happen on the channel, granted, are also some of the areas where I felt like my growth is inhibited. I take ownership of those things, because I've realized that the more I allow and open up and relax on rules, the more opens up. And I've also accepted that the number of subscribers on the channel is actually not the determinant of my success on the channel. There are many determinants, and so if I insist that it's based on subscribers, I'm limiting my growth, and I'm not actually able to see what's right in front of me. And so one of the things that's played out here, because I mean, recently I properly introduced memberships, let's say. Introducing memberships on a channel that's considered a spiritual channel is very triggering. Not just for some of the audience, but for me, okay? Because then it calls one to come face to face with this money wound. This is where I was saying I'm going to get controversial, and I'm not gonna try too hard to be gentle. It kind of is what it is. And I got a message from a mosquito that tried to suck my blood before I actually started this recording, and I was like, okay, we'll use the mosquito. But essentially, it's one of these things where this idea of looking at things as though, as Khunze, it's my wish to show up on the channel, let's say daily or weekly, to do readings and to share my energy without actually getting any money back, is unreasonable. Okay, and it's not just unreasonable. It wouldn't be unreasonable if I had a huge subscriber base, and so then all the ad revenue was covering me and all of that. it just so happens that this collective that I read for, this is how many people have found this channel for whatever reason. Okay. For whatever reason, a lot of the things that I share on the channel are not, it's not this popular stuff. God knows we have many of that, and it's not my wish to do that stuff. And so this is kind of, it is what it is, and this is what I want. And my stubborn head says, I'm still going to do what I want on the channel. I'm not compromising on that. And so one of the things I've had to relax on is, are you really not going to look at doing memberships because it'll upset some people? This is one of the things I had to face. And when I got to this point, it must have been around November. I remember I was taking a walk and I was just considering not just memberships and like asking for money, let's say. It wasn't just that. It was also this idea of like, I need to grow in my own life. I need, my own stability physically, resources. I need to be more comfortable, because for many years I kind of pulled on this, resilience and resolve and knowing things were going to come right. This faith. It is not easy to just live on faith alone, because you're then, at every corner, and this is touching on another comment, and I'll put it on the screen as well, but it creates a situation where daily I'm needing to, remind myself that I'm going to be fine. And I got to that point where I realized I deserve to not start my daily base off that. I can just actually create a sort of a layer for myself that allows me to feel stronger. And what I found from that is that it's easier to show up on the channel, because what happens is that if I show up all the time and I am just sharing my energy and I've got to find another place to replenish me, I run the risk of actually becoming toxic towards my environment. That's like in a relationship where someone comes to visit you and then you share your energy and then they don't give you the best of themselves, and then they go and give other people the best of themselves, like Starbucks. I don't know how else to put that, but that's kind of, I realized as I was taking this walk that this is unavoidable. And I run the risk of losing the channel and needing to pause and go get a job. And I was not willing to do that. When you reach your limit and you're like, I'm not losing my channel because of that. I'm not. And so then I started to realize, okay, I can actually, share a lot of my energy as I usually do. There's actually enough to go around. It reminds me of that abundance card where there's the apple basket and then there's lots more apples growing. This is like to accept that I deserve some money and to open it up and not allow the projections around money to block me has made the channel richer. It's allowed me to share more readings. It's allowed me to feel less tired. It's allowed me to feel more secure in my environment. It actually allows one to create better content. And it's not so much that any of the content that I was providing before was compromised. It's more around you also realizing that you may be limiting yourself in certain areas of your life because of rules that are actually like man-made rules. At some point I wish we could just all kumbaya in a circle and all share our money and just survive together. I mean, not exactly like that, but I had this ideal sort of way of looking at it. But it became sort of, in this world that we're currently in, unrealistic. And I started to realize, I got an email from Temu wanting to, and if the Temu person is listening, you'll hear my response here, because I actually haven't responded. They've emailed me like 3 times and I'll respond, but wanting to run some affiliate program off my channel. I will sooner sell my own products on my real estate. That's what Pyramid Energy is. Pyramid Energy, real estate belonging to Khumtse. Okay, it's mine. And I will sooner sell my own product on this channel than someone else's. That's how I feel about that. And so I realized that the challenge is not, and ads are so annoying. Ads are so annoying, but they're like kind of, for people that say, and I say ads, you know, every time I talk about a membership, that's sort of advertising. But I have not got a steady place where I slot that in. But I'll talk about it as it comes up. I'm allowing Spirit to lead me in terms of the frequency of how often I mention it and all of those kinds of things. And Spirit is the one that actually puts the information in the various pockets, and like, this goes to memberships, this goes to Spirit, my higher self, whatever it is. I'm allowing that. But for a long time, I was blocking it. I think that there are a lot of things where we realize finally that we've reached our limit on something, when the thing we truly want, whether it's money or peace or space, whatever it is, or our energy back, there's that point you reach where you risk losing it completely if you don't, change how you're behaving. And in this particular case, this is relevant, this feminine uprising, it's like, this was all happening within my own masculine and feminine. And so this is not something I put on the audience. There was a time last year I went through this thing where I got a bit upset with the audience. I can say it now because I've learned now, I sort of managed it. But the bottom line on that is that I seriously ran the risk of not being able to do my work if I don't do this thing. And so this thing had to sort of come into my life so that I can keep what I love in my life. And that's a lot of the work that I was doing, moving from 2025 into 2026, is really allowing these ideas of love and value to come and live in one place safely, without like projection and without, and so I had to come to the truth of that. It was actually in my 2026 energetics video, that one that I did. A lot of that stuff has actually come true already. But that has been my biggest lesson. That's been my biggest lesson. And that was a big thing for me to walk away from. Because when you deny certain things from yourself, you literally could lose everything because of that. And it's a bit sad for me that it has to get to that, that resistance can be so tough that it can sometimes get to that where one feels like they've lost what they love. Okay. And for many people, this is just yourself, because you're afraid of any repercussions or any reactions or this judgment where if you do this, it means that you're like that. When actually it's something that I've allowed to feel very deep when it's not that deep, if you know what I mean. I have money. I spend it the way I wish. If I want to buy an overpriced cappuccino, I do it. If I want to buy an overpriced pair of jeans, I do it. And if I don't feel like it, I don't do it, right? It depends on how much I want that thing and if I have the resources. At no point do I decide those jeans should be given to me. I should not have to pay for them, because actually somebody took it upon themselves to design the jeans, to buy the material, to make the jeans, and to pay for a work towards a brand that can actually sell the jeans at that price. The fact that those jeans, the fabric is not actually that expensive doesn't mean necessarily that they should be sold at cost, because not everyone wants to start making their own jeans and sourcing their own material from scratch. And that's actually a lot of how I see my work now. For years, I struggled, and I just don't feel like struggling anymore. I don't feel like I need to. And I just feel like I deserve to make a living. Still, the fact that, I used to be in corporate, and I just could not go back there. I cannot go back there. And it's interesting because when I was in corporate, I didn't realize the level to which I was being exploited. I wasn't awake to that. My daily routine revolved around getting a check. And the fact that I can actually do this work now, it's more a privilege. It's a privilege to do this work, but then I need to have that sense of leadership because now nobody else is going to send me a check. I need to have that sense of leadership and stand up for myself and realize the value that I'm adding while also giving a lot of myself. It's actually the fact that I give so much, I believe, that allows me to create something that can become stable and allow me to continue giving. It makes this whole thing sustainable. But one is not able to see that when they allow themselves to over consider other people's needs before their own. And for the greater system, it makes a lot more sense for an individual to make sure that they are looked after and that their needs are looked after, so that they can also tell when they're in the wrong place, when things are out of place and not healthy, and so that they can build something that has enough to share with everyone. But as soon as you have, and this is not me at all calling anybody, please do not misunderstand me as I use this analogy. But essentially, the reason I brought up the mosquito is we learned in biology, a lot of us who've done biology understand the idea of symbiosis, a symbiotic relationship, and a relationship where there's a parasite and what's the other one called? A host. Okay. This idea, and the reason I'm talking about this is actually, and I can't tell whether this comment was a joke or not. That's why I never responded to it. And I was still in the shaky spot where I wasn't sure how everything was going to land. But this person wrote here, pyramid energy, are you trying to gain off my frequency? I assumed that what this person was referring to is my mention of memberships and all of that, and maybe Patreon products. A year ago, this comment would have sunk me. But this time it didn't, because I've become much more aware of what I'm bringing. Okay. In a relationship, in a personal relationship, this understanding is very dangerous. This understanding that you owe someone pieces of you and you owe someone your energy and you aren't to get anything back. And this is not to say that everything is transactional, but it is to say it's coming closer to understanding and knowing your value and knowing what you deserve and kind of how you want to live, and that nobody is stuck anywhere and everyone has choice and some things can be exchanged and nobody's forced into any exchanges. And so you can very much easily opt out of any offer all the time. You could walk past Starbucks or you can walk in and purchase. It's not that deep. This is probably the biggest lesson that I've learned. I recognize a lot of it is around, it's a religious sort of church sort of trauma where people feel like churches have really exploited people, making them feel like they owe some of their money to someone. And to an extent, I agree with this. I really do. But in this digital world, and in this world where there are professional services like therapists, psychologists, and doctors and all of that, people pay for healing. They don't have to. They don't have to. They can. It's there. It's available. And my goal mostly is to make stuff accessible, not totally out of reach, because I'm mindful of how I felt at a point. And so that's where I am on that. And I felt like I needed to have this conversation just because very seldom I can't say never, but very seldom do creators actually bring this topic to the table. It's a scary one to bring to the table, but I feel like it's like worth engaging on. It's worth talking about this stuff because a lot of us are still stuck. And what happens is that while you're still stuck in that mindset where that's how you think about things and believe, that's what you believe about how things should work. When you unpack it, a lot of the thinking you could find is very flawed in terms of how energy is shared and exchanged and all of that. What is being brought to the table, just because a lot of creators do give stuff for free, it doesn't mean everybody has to. If I only sold products, my channel would sink because nobody would visit my channel. Nobody would know what I'm doing. Do I give free content and share free content and share free energy so that I can sell stuff? Absolutely not, because for years, that is not what drove me and it's not what drives me. I don't even think, spiritually I'd be this open and be able to receive like this if that was my driving sort of thing that directs me, and I don't think I would. It's just not enough of, a reason, a driving force. And having covered that, I feel like I've covered this question that I received from Lena, and she said, could you read on the scarcity mindset or scarcity complex, how they interact and perpetuate each other? Something I mentioned recently, this was in this particular video, Cloaked Energy Exposed, okay, which is, it's not just a karmic reading, guys, this reading, it's deep, but it was a good one. But I'm going to put the definition that I Googled and explained on the screen. But instead of going back to defining that, I want to sort of use personal story to explain and answer this question that Lena's asked. Let's say growing up, you had this reality of not having enough resources, whatever that resource is, whether it's money or love or whatever it is. That is sort of, it's in you, right? It's in you. It's sort of wound up in how you think and operate and what you believe about the world. But then you end up working, and I'm not, it's a personal story, but I did have love growing up. That's not the point I'm making, but it's, my personal story is not actually relevant. So I'm just going to share this, how it's coming out. But essentially, if I then find a job, okay, which I did, found a job, started working, and I earned very well. But looking back, I was actually living through what I'd now call a false sense of safety. Okay, a false sense of safety, because underneath this security blanket, this safety blanket of salary, underneath that was this reality about the world that without this security blanket, I don't have resources that I don't have. Okay, and so then I'm only able to survive and thrive with this corporate salary. If I then along the way encounter a situation where I lose that job, okay, which I did more than once, where I lose that job, I can feel very unsafe. And with that unhealed entire, like, deep layer underneath, that's always been there. So now my safety blanket's gone, my security blanket's gone. This matter is now very complex. And so then it becomes like a cycle that's feeding itself negatively, because that was my experience growing up. And as an adult, maybe I was unaware of it for a period, but now it's become my reality. And so I've got this belief system that's built into me, perpetuating this cycle, when in reality, I am safe. I can build my own resources, but I don't believe that. I just don't believe that. I don't feel that way, because it's like in my cells, this reality that this is how it was before I had a job. And it starts to, that's what perpetuates the cycle, I believe. I had to sort of weave personal stuff into that, because when we talk about things in theory, it can just remain in theory a lot and actually just risk not answering the question. Okay, the last question I want to address, I think this is the last, is this one about the ear thing, the ear sounds, that you can here but not here. You can feel it. I actually got quite a number of comments about this thing, about how well I described it. And I don't know any other way of describing it. This comment says, okay, the examples of the clairaudient tones was so spot on. Could you go even deeper into the meanings behind these things? I'd be so fascinated by what you have to say about them, or like what your guides get you to think on this. For some reason, Spirit keeps getting me to like push this with people right now. Maybe not push, but invite. That would be such a fascinating topic, especially with your thought process, but obviously only if it aligns with you. Well, thank you so much, Jenny, because it aligns. Not just that, okay? This is an example, by the way, everyone. This is an example of, like, there are words that she's used here. The way she's worded this sentence, fascinated by what you have to say about them, or like what your guides get you to think on this. So Jenny might think this is just what she thought. But in the background, before I read this comment, I was already experiencing this thing where I felt like Spirit was trying to get this explanation out of me. And I don't know if I can say a full explanation, and I'll tell you what I've picked up, because I mean, many of you might have actually experienced fireflies in your life. I have never experienced fireflies. I've seen them on TV. I might have seen fireflies on camp as a child. Blurry memory, I'm not sure. But I was lying in bed and I was dozing off, and I saw very clearly in my mind's eye a firefly. It was definitely a firefly. It looked like a glowing soft light glow moving around. I didn't understand the significance, but I was like, why am I being showed a firefly? I looked it up, what a firefly represents, and I saw it, but I was like, it was also one of those symbolism explanations that feel like it could have been another explanation. I never voiced this. I didn't write it down. The next day, I came across a video. I can't even find the video right now or know what it actually talked about, but it was about fireflies and something about Morse code. So today I looked it up. I looked up the link between fireflies and Morse code, because essentially when I experience that dub 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 sound, okay, when I experience that, it sounds like, listen now, stop what you're doing. There's a message coming through. We have an interference, and whatever you are doing right now is blocking what we are trying to get through. It sounds like that. If it could speak, it would be saying something like that to me. When that sound comes up, while I'm listening to a reading, it's literally blocking the reading. It's like saying, blocked, we're going to make this so uncomfortable, you're not going to be able to listen to this. I seldom get that when I'm just doing my own thing. I don't get that dubbing sound. If I'm just at ease and doing my own thing, sometimes I'll get that sweet sound, which often says listen. And if I start writing, I'm getting downloads. That's what's going down. But that other sound has like messaging. I've always felt like something is speaking to me. And so when I saw this Morse code thing, I looked it up. The link between fireflies and Morse code lies in their use of bioluminescent light flashes as a specific coded language for communication, functioning similarly to the dots and dashes used in human Morse code. Each species of firefly has a unique flash pattern, a combination of timing, frequency, and duration that allows them to identify mates of their own species in the dark. I don't want to unpack this a lot further, because I'm just going to start making stuff up, and I don't want to do that. But I'm telling you now that sound is Morse code. I don't know what else to tell you. It's Morse code. And this explanation, sharing that it's basically light codes being sent through, took me back to a download of mine from 2024, from before I started the channel. Okay. I've put the date here so you can see, 8 February 2024. I started Pyramid Energy on YouTube on the 8th or 9th of March or 10th of March 2024, that same year. And this also ties back, to Shauna's comment about feminine rising. Okay, this is about to get a bit rabbit hole-ish, but I'm gonna just share it. And so take what resonates and leave the rest, because I am reluctant to weave down this rabbit hole and try to find too much meaning here. I never understood this download when I got it. It's unfolded gradually over the years, but it's never made so much sense the way it does now. Okay? It says leadership, Sphinx rising out of sand desert, light coming through the four. One word to describe myself, brave. We did. Okay, ignore that 2 pages line. I don't know what it means. I don't remember why I wrote that. Page 1, want. Page 2, need. Page 3, combined, will. Okay, this is a download, no context. But what I got to understanding later, a year later, I wrote a poem, Whisper of the Sphinx. Egypt, the land where slaves were once set free, where mystery births stability, where courage lays guard, bears witness to seekers, those supple to riddle and already anointed. Okay. And then I wrote this next piece. I'm sorry I rushed through that. I've got to limit this video now. I started writing about, and I'm going to leave this on the screen for you to pause and read. But when I was writing this poem, when I was writing it, I could see the Sphinx sitting still there, okay? And I could see the Sphinx watching, moving its eyes the eyes were moving, but the Sphinx was obviously made of sandstone, just there. And when the Mona Lisa started coming up, I saw basically the same sort of eye shiftiness where she's still, but her eyes move depending on your perspective, as though she's watching everything. She can see everything, but she's unmoving. And the Sphinx, I also got the sense that the Sphinx is guarding something. But that initial download with the Sphinx rising out of the sand, and I don't know if that was actually in the wording, the Sphinx was Sphinx rising out of the sand desert. It's as if it's this courage rising, this courage that's always been guarded is rising. There's a lot around one's perspective that has to be said. This light coming through the 4, I later got a different download about when the 3 becomes the 4. I've mentioned this a few times on Pyramid Energy and I couldn't find my notes. But I'm understanding that as this shift from 3D to 4D. I'm understanding this as this ability, this inherent ability that we all have as alchemists to manifest. And that it's very much this ability, we have it, but the realization of it, and within this lifetime to realize our ability to manifest, knowing, when you know you're going to create something and you don't know how you're going to create it and you don't have all the instructions or whatever, that journey is very much based on perspective. There's a lot more to be said about even just the sand falling away to leave this Sphinx to rise up. It's almost like a sculpture and you don't know how this sculpture came to be. There's also this stuff I see around this very dry period where you feel like you don't have, and there's a lot going on there. But this Morse code is related to information coming in. It's light. It's very liberating information that's trying to access you. And I believe that dubbing sound generally happens when it needs your attention and it needs you to consider what you're actually doing, what you're taking in at that time, and to create an awareness that you're actually receiving. Because you're a receiver. You're a human telephone. You're a human television. I also don't see it as a coincidence that In the tarot, the number 8 in the major arcana is strength. The Leo card, which is about the lion and that courage, and the number 8 representing infinity has to do with Lion's Gate, and that you can actually, create this positive momentum in your life. You're a generator. You're a generator, but you've got to learn how your own generating ability works. And it's also not that deep. It's just a lot of breaking down of a lot of these ideas of like how we've been taught to operate, how we've been taught to generate. We are not raised to generate independently. We are not raised to believe that we can thrive without a corporate salary necessarily. A salary, when I say corporate, I'm referring to not just like typically corporate. I'm saying any organization that is allowed and supported in this world to take your resources that you can't even measure, take way more of those resources than what they give back to you. I think that's my definition. And so in terms of this page 1, page 2, page 3, I believe the journey does start with you wanting something, desiring something, and then you going through this phase where you don't have it and you don't feel like you can have it. It turns into a need. It turns into deprivation. It turns into, not having for long, until you kind of find this balance within yourself where you combine these two things, and somehow this will rises from inside of you. Okay, this will, all the noise falls away, the sand falls away with time, and this will rises out of you, where somehow they meet in the middle, and these things that you want, you're no longer attached to because you know you can have them, and the things that you need, will find you, but you actually have the will to rise up. This is the solar plexus idea, to actually meet them halfway and allow them to happen. And to allow them to happen, there's things that you do have to give up along the way. These things are usually things that you don't need, and you only feel like you need them because of conditioning. If you can unpack that for yourself, everyone's story is different. But just throughout this journey on pyramid energy, I very much feel that even this intrigue, someone recently found the channel, said that I think she said she's been dreaming about pyramids and seeing triangles. I believe that this intrigue and feeling like there's a past life that you've lived in Egypt, whatever role you played, or, I think I was a spy. I think I'm still a spy technically, but it's the mystery and the intrigue that actually that's where you find all these, in inverted commas, secrets to your own freedom and discovering your power. The pyramids are almost like this divine gift left on earth so that we don't stop asking questions. And apparently a lot of these answers are already in the Bible. They're already they're everywhere. But all those places where they are have been shrouded in controversy, and they'll just name it. They will cover everything with this murky stuff so that you never go there and you never question it and you never get to the bottom of it. But it's all around us. The information is all around us. Humans are just so special. I don't know what happens, because even the spiritual world, you think you're escaping into this place where everyone is free and everyone is loving and and it turns out to be so much the same as this world that we fight, and so we take the long route because it's a journey. But essentially, I do believe that the lesson is that we are free. We are free and we are powerful, and we just need to accept that the things that we want are the things that we need, and that these things are possible, and that we deserve them, and that we can create them. And just with your own body, you actually can receive all information that you need to get you there. If only you can strip away all these things that steal your peace. Because to create, you need peace, which is readily available depending on the barriers that you've maintained in place. That is me. I have to put a stop to this now. An hour and 20 minutes is super indulgent. But that's what coffee's like. If you go out for coffee with a friend to catch up, you don't cut it down to 20 minutes and dash, and so that's how I feel. Thank you all so much for being here, especially those of you who are actually here to hear me say this. Sending you all so much love.